Hello everyone, welcome to my channel TechieTaught. Hope you all are doing good. So today we'll discuss about Spring Security, and I have already covered Spring Security basic like concepts, the definitions, and all these terminologies used in Spring Security. And hope you have gone through the first section. So in the second part, we'll discuss about two authentication mechanism. So one is the form-based authentication, and the other one is basic authentication. So the form-based authentication is mainly used, or the form-based authentication, you can say that Spring Security will provide a login screen for the user. Suppose you are trying to access an endpoint, a secure endpoint. So when you will try to hit that request, the Spring Security filters will check if your request is trying to hit a secure resource or secure endpoint. So that time the Spring Security filters will redirect a login page to you. So that login page is something you are not designing. So that is available in or provided by the Spring Security. So there, what you need to pass as a user, you need to pass username and password. So that username and password you have already configured somewhere in your application. And that username and password you have to enter in that login form. And then the Spring Security, when you submit that form, the Spring Security will check whether or validate whether that username and password is valid or not. If it is valid, then it will allow you to access the resources. So that is a form-based authentication. And in this form-based authentication, your what you are passing, right? Your authentication or your username, password, it will be stored in cookies. So, or it will be carry forward in sessions. So once you are logged in, if you want to log out, you have to log out, then it will clear the session. So it will all this information, it will be stored in cookies and sessions in form-based authentication. Hope it is clear. The definition first is clear. And then what about the basic authentication? So basic authentication where we don't need a login form because we don't want. So our motive is when I want to access the resource, so that time a Spring Security don't show me a login form. Instead, I can pass the username and password, same username and password through a REST client, whether it's a Postman or I can test it in Swagger. So here I have to pass that in an authorization header. So the value or the username and password, we have to generate a base64 token by combining this username and password, and that token or that username password values, encoded values, we have to pass in the header, okay, in the request header with as a authorization header. So we have to add a authorization header, and we have to pass the basic followed by the encrypted username password values. So in that way, we will access our resources. So that is the basic authentication. So it won't prompt. So we can also test it in both. I will do that examples. We'll run in our browser and we will run in through Postman. So now the Spring Security is intelligent enough. So it will find where your request is coming from. So if your request is coming from web browser, so if you are suppose hitting the secure endpoint through this web browser, then the Spring Security knows, yes, so you are trying to access the secured resource through a web browser. So it will prompt the login form to you. So you have to pass username and password. And same thing it will do through a Postman. So that time it will find that you are trying from a REST client, whether it's a Postman or SoapUI or Swagger. So that time it won't ask for login screen. And here you have to pass through authorization header. So without wasting time, let's get started. So we'll first create a Spring Boot application and we'll develop a couple of endpoints. We'll write endpoints and we'll add the Spring security dependencies and then we will test it. So you have to first come to start.spring.io and then choose a Maven project, Java, and I'm using 2.7.4. So if you will use any version before 2.7.4, right, you will have different like different way, like those classes and the way you have written the Spring security is completely changed now, if you compare to 2.6 or 2.5 or 2.2 and the 2.7 onwards. So that's why in this video I want to show a demo on this 2.7.4 with the latest way of doing or handling the Spring security. And let's use this, and then I'll create TechieTaught and say web, because we have to develop certain REST endpoints, and then choose security. Okay, we have added now Spring security, and then we can add dev tools. Okay, so this much, we don't need more much. Okay, so generate. Okay, so now we'll import that. So go and import existing Maven project and then choose. So we have imported, and then what we can do, let me check application properties. We don't need anything, and we can just create application.yml file. So in application YML, we'll add a couple of things. So which is very common. So like I just want to add what is the application name, what is the description, and the server port, which was the default is 8080. I just overridden to 89090. So that means. So then what we need to do is let's create a couple of, so this is our Spring Boot application. Then we have to create the class. Let's create the package. So this is the controller, and then I'll create a controller class. Okay, so I've just written a couple of things quicker. So okay, so I've just written this controller customer is a model we need to create, and then let's create another package called model, and here we can create a customer. Okay. That's it. And then in the controller, I'm using this customer to just create it. So it's a post mapping. So now both get and the post mapping is a secure endpoint I'm developing. So when you will access whether it's any the get mapping or the post mapping or get endpoint or post endpoint, that time it will ask for a form to log in or a form-based authentication or a basic authentication. In both the way, you can able to access these two endpoints. So that is the objective. That's why I just created this controller, and then we have created this model. So then what else? Okay. So now you have to now create one configuration class. Okay, so now let's create a configuration class. That is, it will enable your web security. So okay, so you have add configuration. Then what you need to add? You have to add the enable web security. So because we need web Spring security to enable uh, the authentication mechanism, right? So you have to say enable web security. Okay. Okay, so we have added this configuration and enable web security configuration. So let's create a couple of methods. So here what you need to do, add a bin. So it's a bin. And you have to write public. And what you have to return? So you have to return security filter. So there is a security filter chain. So this bin you need. Okay. And then you can write a method. You can write filter chain or security filter chain, whatever, right? And then you can type HTTP. So it will take HTTP security as a parameter. Okay. And you can say throws exception. Okay. And then here, what you need to do? So you have to say return. What you need to return? So you have to return a bin of type this security filter chain. Okay. As I said, so when you are trying to access a secured resource, Spring security provides different filter mechanism which will filter your request. So this is the one security filter chain. Filter chain. It has multiple filters. Okay, to filter your request. So we are using this security filter chain, and then what you need to do, you have to say HTTP dot to disable cross-site scripting. Okay, CSRF. So you have to say CSRF dot, and you have to say disable. So this is the most important. So you have to first say HTTP dot CSRF. Okay, cross-site scripting. Then you have to disable it. So then what you need to do, so you want to apply authorization, right? You want to authorize your request. So what you have to do? So you have to type authorize, okay? Authorize HTTP requests, okay? So your motive is to authorize your requests, okay? And then what you need to pass, there is a couple of other, you can like choose like which kind of endpoint you need security, and which kind of URL you don't need to provide the security. So those part we'll check later, but in this case we'll see whatever request is coming, it needs authentication. Okay, it needs some security to implement. So for all type of requests, okay, and then we have to say any request, and then you have to say authenticated. Okay, so whatever request is coming, you just authenticate. Okay, and then we have to choose there is a and. Okay, and these are the certain filters you have to remember. So what are the different types of authentication? I said we will cover here. Two types of authentication we'll cover in this content. One is the form-based authentication. Other one is the STT, basic authentication. Okay. So now we'll say form-based authentication. So it's a form login. Okay. So you have to choose this. And what you need to do, the next is we have to say basic authentication. Okay. So for basic authentication, we have to say HTTP basics. Okay. And we need now, we have been now integrated, or we have just added two filters. One is the form login and the HTTP basics. Okay, and then what you need to do, we need to create the object. So in this way, it will create the object. So we can just, for readability purpose, you can do like this. So HTTP is nothing but HTTP security object. So we are saying disable this CSRF, okay, and then apply authorization on each and every request, okay, any request. And then we are saying authenticated means check for authentication. Okay, we need a security to implement. And then we are saying what kind of authentication mechanism we want to implement. We are saying implement form login. And then we are also saying implement basic authentication. Okay. And then we are using this build method. Okay. So it's a builder pattern. So we are just returning a security filter chain here. Okay. So this configuration is required for form-based authentication and basic authentication. If you need only form-based authentication, just disable this. If you want HTTP only basic authentication, just disable this. Okay. And if you need both, just add both. So that is the thing. The other part is we have to configure username and password because the form login and the basic authentication required a user name and password to authenticate. So then what you need to do, we have to again create another bin. So we'll say public, and this bin returns a user details service. Okay, user details service. You can see the user details service is provided by this security package. Okay, so we just need a bin of user details service, and method name you can write anything. So we'll just say user details. Okay, and here what you need to do, we'll just create. Okay, so here we'll just add this as a bin. Okay, and then we need to create the user. So here we need to first create the user detail service. Okay, so for this you have a model. So this is the model user details, and it also provided by Spring Security. So just create a user details, and here say user Okay. So here, right, we have a couple of methods available. So we'll say user dot with default password encoded, because we'll pass here our username and password. So here you can create a user details and then you can pass directly, or you can also use this one. So let's use this one. So what it is saying, with default password encoder. So it will like implement encoding, password encoding mechanism to encode our password. And then we have to say username. Okay, and username will pass as, suppose I'll pass a user, or I'll pass Robin. Okay, and then I'll say password. I'll say TechieTaught. Okay, and you have passed, and here this is also mandatory, so you have to pass the rules. Okay, because we have discussed granted authority or the authority, right? You need some authority here. So for these you can say any role. So suppose for this user it's a user role. Okay, or you can give admin role something like that. And then you have to say build. So when you say build, so it is returning a user detail subject. So here you can do like this. And you can say return new, and we are using here in memory. So in memory user details manager. So here we need to use this one, in memory user details manager, and we'll pass this user. Okay, so here in this way you have to configure. So basically this bin is mainly used for providing your username and password. So for that we have created a user details object by using this user model, and there is a default password encoder which is deprecated, but since it's a basic uh, uh, you can say very fundamental video on this Spring security, and we'll discuss about each and every components. So that's the reason it's good to use this default password encoder mechanism. So then we are using our username and password, and then the some roles you can pass user or admin or something like that, and then we are building. Okay, and we are keeping this in a memory. It's in memory storage. Okay, and then that's it. I think we have created this. So okay, it's done. So now we can start our application. So just start your application, and we'll just hit this basic auth and hello. So in the console you can see the server starts on 9090, and then that's it, right? So we have to test it now. So for this, let me test in incognito. So now we are testing in browser. Okay, so it will now show us the login form. So http:// localhost colon 9090 slash this and hello. See, so then the Spring security filter, it's redirect a login page, right? So then you can pass, suppose I'll pass now the default one, user and password, right? So it will, what it will show, it won't allow me to access the resource. So because my username is Robin and the password is TechieTaught. See, so after that, I'm able to access my endpoint, which is a get endpoint. So similarly, the same thing, I want to try here. So it's a get, and I'll say http:// localhost 9090 slash basic slash auth slash hello. And here, if I'll try to hit, so it's saying 401 unauthorized because I need to pass the username and password. So here, what you need to do, so here you have to just choose this basic auth. Okay, we'll check about all other things, but here in this case, because we are discussing about form-based authentication and basic authentication, and it's a REST client, so you can choose the basic authentication. Okay, it's not authorization, it's a basic authentication. And here, suppose you pass username and password, try. So it's a wrong one, right? So it won't allow. It's a 401 unauthorized. So here you can also pass your right username and password. And you can now able to access your endpoint, right? And you can see here what will happen. If you choose basic authentication, what will happen under the header, right? It will add a authorization header here, and it is saying the basic followed by this one. So what is this? So this is nothing but your encoded value. So here, this is base 64 encode, and here what you need to do, you have just type your username, colon, password. Okay, and then generate. This one, right? The same value, it is passed here. CAM something 2H0. Okay, the same thing. So either you can directly also, like here, no need to pass this. You can directly come, add this authorization header, put basic space and the encoded value. You can encode it and copy this value and test it. So in this way, you can try. So now we have to test the post endpoint. Okay. So for the post endpoint, now we have to test in Postman. So it's a post, and we have to say not hello, we have to say create. Right. And here what you need to pass, you can directly choose here as well. Is the basic auth, right? And then on the body, what you need to pass, you have to pass your customer object like this. Okay, because this customer object, you're passing as a request body the customer, right? And it has customer ID, customer name, and address. And here also we are passing these three things. And let's hit. So it is returning the customer object, right? So in this way, we have tested both form-based authentication as well as the basic authentication. Okay. We have tested also through browser as well as through Postman. And this is the simple code, and you can add your authentication, you can add your database integration. You can try to save your model into database or some other file system. You can play around different HTTP methods here. So in that case, you can try to understand what is or how form-based authentication and the basic authentication works. And if you like the video, if you like the content, and if you really, if this video helps you to understand the concept, please subscribe and like and comment.